Just say somebody in here. You don't have any viewers yet, though. Oh, you already said. Where you at, brother? Man, so I bet you as soon as I pull this up, I'm gonna get all this feedback too. Watch. Come on in, come on in. You want to say the heathens? Come on, man. Come on, my phone is on 20%, man. Like, I done tagged you and all of that. What's up? Yeah, there you go. Okay, I see you. Shalom.
Shalom, man. Shalom, shalom. How you doing?
What up with it?
Man, nothing much, nothing much. Let me do something real fast. All right, I'm straight now. So, all right, I'm straight. I'm straight. So, yeah. How you doing this morning, my brother?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Thanks for asking. How you?
Oh man, I'm making it, man. Just one of them busy mornings. I don't know if Walker's right now.
Oh, okay. So is
So,
this is this, is,
yes,
is
sir.
this your
But
preferred method of debating, like Facebook Live? Is this like what your primary source is?
yeah, a long time ago, I only tried Google Hangout one time, and no, it wasn't going.
See, look. Uh,
It didn't go good the one time we tried it.
okay,
So,
cause
and it kind of threw everything off because people was like, look, he don't know what to say and he running and all this stuff because my connections weren't that good back here trying to do my Google Hangouts. But for some reason, for Facebook, it actually works better.
Oh,
So I don't,
because
man,
you
I
kind
can't
of
call
like
it.
skipping on my end, but I don't know if I'm skipping on your end. But it's all good though. You know, we can work through it through the spirit. You know.
You know what I'm saying? That's my signal. So I know Google Hangout when it's been good. So because I tried it
Okay.
before.
Now, before we start the debate, right? I want to lay down, you know, a foundation, right? Because a lot of people, when they do these debates, and I don't know if you agree or disagree, but when they have these debates, it tends to spiral out of control, right? And what I mean by that is other you people try to bring in other source of information, and if we're talking contextually, that can be easily done. Do you agree or disagree?
Yes, we keep it. Yes.
Right. So the thing about having a debate with a contextual aspect or a contextual situation is that you have to understand that it's context, right? So once you take
Correct.
the context out of it, then you're no longer talking about the same subject. All right. So
Uh,
I just wanted to lay that down. You know what I'm saying? So it won't be no confusion. Because I mean, I'm sure you have many
right.
debates. I'm sure you watch
But
many debates, and that's one of the things that tends to, you know, hinder us in debating.
but what I would like to say is, because that right there could be placed off of what a person feel is contextual or not. I would like to say that if we're gonna go through the Bible, we can agree that everyone, especially the prophets and stuff, they all pull from the specific sources, which was the Torah and the Tanakh. So contextual wise, the things that they state in the New Testament should be found in the Old Testament.
But that's my point, right? In the Old Testament, it's the same thing. But speaking in the New Testament, being that things happen, right? Because I'm sure you like a one of those people who believes like a lot of things in the Bible has already happened, right?
Well, I believe the whole Bible has been
Right,
fulfilled.
right.
So,
Okay, so not just some of the things, but the whole Bible, right? So if you stand on that
right,
point, then you would have to understand that in the New Testament they were speaking contextually about the Old Testament, right?
correct,
Because without that you have no understanding, right? So it wasn't
correct,
it's not about the Gentiles being this or the Gentiles being that. You know what I'm saying? It's about how it was spoken of. Because if things to you have already been fulfilled, then therefore it would have to be expounded upon, which is what was being done in the New Testament, correct? Okay,
right.
thank you. I appreciate that. All right, so you can start.
All right. Well, if we want to talk about, I think this all derived from my post that I was making dealing with the Gentiles. So, um, I want to go to my first post that I stated, which was Acts 26:28 through 29, and I'm just gonna read it. Acts 26:28 through 29, and this is what it says. It says, King Agrippa. In fact, I'm gonna start at
You said, hold on,
20.
hold on.
Yeah,
My bad. You said Acts
26,
and 20.
and I'm gonna start at 23, and I'm gonna read down to 29. I can respond to that later on. Y'all done.
Go ahead.
But
I'm here.
it starts. It says, and that Christ. In fact, I'm going to start at 21 just for the context. It says, for these causes, the Jews caught me in the temple and went about to kill me. Having therefore obtained help of God, I continue unto this day, witnessing both to the small and great, saying none other things than those which the prophets and Moses did say should come. So right now, Paul is telling King Agrippa, I'm the Jews are mad at me because they don't understand that I am speaking nothing different than what Moses and the prophet said. Okay, so now, verse
Hold on,
23, that Christ,
hold on. I don't mean to cut you off because this is the thing, right? When people have debates, it's point of contention. So that's a point of contention that I'm bringing out for, right? Because you just said that they were speaking of what the prophets and what Moses was speaking of, right? Oh, okay, hold
yes,
on. So Moses was speaking to who? And the prophet.
the
Okay, and who the
Israelites,
prophet? Who were the prophets speaking to?
the
So is
Israelites.
that in context to? Is that in context to that
What?
of them speaking to Israelites? Because
Right.
I'm thinking
This
you're
is
trying to correlate. You're trying to correlate the Gentiles being everyone. Is that? Am I wrong?
well. Now I'm going to go to verse
Okay.
23, and it's going to
Okay.
actually
Go ahead.
tell. It's going to
Okay. Go ahead.
tell. It's going to tell you. This is what Moses and the prophets was telling the Israelites. Verse 23, that Christ should suffer, that he should be the first that should rise from the dead, and should show light unto the people and to the
Which is, I don't
Gentiles.
agree. I don't disagree with that. My bad. I don't disagree with that.
Right. So now, who is the people?
The people would be. The
That will
people
be
would be. Yeah. Exactly.
Israelites.
Okay.
And who is the Gentiles? That will be the non-Israelites.
The Gentiles would be non-Israelites and Israelites that knows who they are, and the people who are not Israelites
Right
ethnically.
now,
I mean,
in the context,
this verse is speaking of everyone, right? Because it says that he should be
right,
the first that should rise from the dead and should show light unto the people and to the Gentiles, right? So
right.
when he rose from the dead, who did he go to?
He went. The message was to the Israelite, well, the Jews first, and then he went
Okay,
out to
but
the
this is what you're
Gentiles.
not understanding. If he's bringing light, right, to in the New Testament about the Old Testament, then how could that inform be? I mean, how could that in turn be everyone?
Okay, because now we got to go back, and this is the problem. This is the point right here. We got to go back to who Moses and the prophets was speaking to. And then he explains what Moses and the prophets was saying. So while Moses and the prophets of the old were on the scene, A, they did not refer to any of the children of Israel as Gentiles. They referred to them to either the children of Israel or what, Judah.
Okay, hold on.
So
Now you're saying that that's only in the Old Testament, right?
that is in the
Okay,
Old
but
Testament.
Gentile is a what word?
What you mean?
What does the word Gentile derive from?
I don't know.
This
It's in the
this is
Old
your
Testament,
error,
though.
bro. You're trying to correlate um, uh, a somewhat modern word, right, to an ancient concept. This is your
Okay.
this is the disconnect that you're having, because being a Gentile is a concept before it's a word. Agreed?
Yes.
Okay, and what concept would that be?
The people are non-Israelite people in this context.
No, but I said being a Gentile is a concept before it's a word, right? So
Well, let's see. Hold on. Let me go to the Old Testament where Gentiles was first brought
okay,
up with the Isles
we
of the
know that
Gentiles.
Japheth were referred to as the Gentiles, which is just goy, which means nations.
Not just Japhet, not just
I,
Japhet. Everybody was
yeah,
referred to
yeah,
as
because
Gentiles.
Gentiles mean nations. So if you were a part of a nation, you
Okay.
were considered a Gentile. This is the
Okay.
this is
So
where the word.
hold on though.
Okay, go ahead.
Hold on. Because in the Old Testament, we can go further on when Gentiles was called
But now
non-Israelites.
now you're talking about it being contextual, because now it's not referring to just nations, because we know that, we know that Isaac was not a nation, right? Right, but
Correct.
we know that he's the father of a nation, of two nations, right?
Correct.
So those nations are the nations. So when you're trying to correlate something that is anciently uh, has a concept to it, but then it's a word put on it contextually in a modern era, you cannot lose focus of that. That's all I'm saying. But go ahead.
Okay, so what I'm saying is you go to Isaiah where this prophecy is pulled from, and you look at the context of Isaiah to understand which Gentiles he's talking about.
Hold on. So you just admitted that it's two different type of Gentiles.
Well, no, well, what I would say is the Gentiles that you're talking about as a nation will be the same people of the Gentiles spoken of in the New Testament. Dealing with now, hold on, dealing with how Israel would have viewed them. The way that Israel was viewing Gentiles in the New Testament were the people outside of covenant with the Most
Okay.
High. The way that the
No, go ahead. Go ahead. I'm listening.
The way that the Gentiles was viewed in the old covenant, or sorry, in the Old Testament, these people also were not in covenant with the Most High.
Okay, what was the Northern Kingdom in the covenant
Of the Most High in the
Yes,
Old Testament? Yes, until they got divorced. Until they got
but
divorced.
did the Northern Kingdom act as the covenanted people, as meaning were they behaving as they should have been behaving?
Yes, until they got
No,
divorced.
okay, but so it actually something happened for them to be divorced, right?
Correct.
Which means that they were behaving in such ways to get divorced, which means that they were not, right, abiding by
Correct.
the law, statutes, and commandments, which would then contextually make them what?
Which would make them, in the eyes of the Israelites, it would make them Gentiles.
Okay.
But it's not
No,
thank you because
We're
we
having
have
a debate, but I'm making points clear.
right.
I'm
So now
making it poignant as to what, when we hit these points, that you cannot go back and revert to something else. That's why I just said that. But my bad.
all right, bet. So now we got our Christ called these these northern kingdoms, these northern kingdomers who lost out of the covenant. Did the Father ever refer to them as Gentiles, or did Christ ever refer to them as Gentiles, or did they always call them the children of Israel? And it was the Jews, it was mankind that referred to them as Gentiles. That's the problem.
Okay, now I have a question for you.
Go ahead.
When Christ said, "Do not go into the way of the Samaria or any Gentiles," right? Who was living in Samaria at the time?
A majority of the people that was living in Samaria was the God, hold on.
Come on.
It had a few northerners there, but it was the people that came.
Go ahead.
It was a mixed multitude. It was some of the northerners, but most of it was the people who came after the Assyrians took over. And hold on, because we got to get some background.
But this is, hold on. This is my point though. When you're saying, I think you're speaking too fast, right? Because you lose context when you say it was a mixed multitude. When you say it's a mixed multitude, you're already not standing on solid ground. This is the problem that we have in debates, and this is what I brought up in the beginning, right? Because if you're saying that it's a mixed multitude, so he said don't go into the Samaria of any Gentiles, how do you know that those Gentiles he was referring to not go to was the northern kingdom? And by you saying that it was a mixed multitude, you cannot even present a premise as to who specifically he was or who he wasn't talking to, because you just stated that it's a mixed multitude. So now you don't have the context anymore. This is why debates get out of control.
Okay, and I hear everything you say. So now let's go into the context. Because now, while I was saying a mixed multitude, why was I saying in a mixed multitude? And how can we not know if it's the Northerners or if it was the people who claim to be Northerners? Because we had a situation, and that's what I was trying to say before I was kind of interrupted. See, what people lose out of context dealing with this is they don't understand that when the Assyrians took the northern kingdom to Samaria, that most of those northerners left. And we had Jews go into the land and teach those outsiders who were not of the stock of Israel.
You cannot prove. Hold on.
Oh, well,
Hold on. You cannot prove that the Gentiles specifically, who he said don't go to, was not the northern kingdom. You cannot prove that, because you just said that it's a mixed multitude amongst them. So if I say go to these people but don't go to these people, how can you then state what context I'm speaking of if you don't understand in what reference I'm speaking of? You can't. If I say it's transvestites, it's homosexuals, and it's married couples over there, go to these people but don't go to these people, even if I'm using the same word. You can't say, oh well, he's not talking about everybody of those people, or he's only talking about these, when you stated out of your mouth that it was a mixed multitude. So he would then have to make a commandment to go to these people, but then have a strict I would say protocol or rule as to who to go to amongst these people. That's the context. He said, don't go to these people amongst these people because of this. And the context lies in, as the northern kingdom was not considered to be part of Israel anymore because they were what? Cast off. And being that they were in Samaria, the northern kingdom was up there, but they were not living like Jews. This is the context that he was using. And for you to say it's a mixed multitude, you can't wiggle your way in that. That's what I'm saying. I'm not it's not a point of that you can't. I'm just saying you have to have an understanding before you do that. That's all I'm saying. And you would refrain yourself from doing something like that if you had the understanding.
Okay, so now let me read a little context to you, okay? Because now we're talking about who's in Samaria, right? So let's talk about who's in Samaria, because once again, I was trying to make the point.
We can't speak about just who's in Samaria if we know that the northern kingdom was in Samaria. Yes or no?
Okay, so now,
but you can't do this, bro. You can't do this. If you just established that the northern kingdom is in Samaria, then how can you prove that he's not talking about not going to the northern kingdom?
Okay, so now for the people, I'm trying to explain, but you keep trying to cut me.
Not go to anywhere else.
Okay, I'm trying to, but you're not liking my answer. So listen to